I'm so passionate about it, and so are you. I just think the passion, to some degree outweighs education in certain traditional senses, because when your interest is there, my God, how much can you learn, just by reading books and listening to podcasts and watching over people that you respect,
My guest today is Laurén Larocca. She's an old friend of mine and my family's, and we're here today talking about her health and wellness journey. You can find her on Instagram at Laurén Larocca. Laurén Larocca, welcome to the American Glutton Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ethan.
Thank you for agreeing to do it.
Yeah.
Where to begin, Laurén? Where to begin? Where do we start?
I don't know.
Health, wellness. You are at the cutting edge, at the forefront of wellness. Is this true?
I do like to call myself everyone's favorite unlicensed medical practitioner.
Okay, but then you also do have some licenses, or you're studying to, aren't you actually a medical or a health person too?
I had the honor of interning for one of the doctors that I started working with as a patient 5 or 6 years ago, and we just super clicked. She became a really good friend. Her name is Dr. Sarah Whitney. She's in Los Angeles. And I just said, "You're so smart. She is honestly like a decade ahead of even other doctors that I really, really respect." She works with a lot of Lyme patients, which is a very misunderstood area in medicine. So I interned for her for several months last year. And so I got to see a lot of things and talk to her patients. And she even took me to a 2-day ozone seminar that was for doctors only. So yes, I have exposure to things that most people do not, but I have no licenses whatsoever. I didn't even finish high school, so I just want to be clear with your listeners.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I didn't finish high school. Listen, these are conversations, and some of the people we have conversations with went to medical school, and some of them, are however you get a license to be a nutritionist. There's that.
Yeah.
And then there's people like you and me who are interested and studied certainly, but not licensed.
Right. Yeah. I'm so passionate about it, and so are you. I just think the passion, to some degree outweighs education in certain traditional senses, because when your interest is there, my God, how much can you learn, just by reading books and listening to podcasts and watching over people that you respect,
And what are your interests? What are you trying to solve through your passions?
That's a good question. My interest is this. It actually started with a personal problem that I wasn't doing well after I have 2 kids now, but after my first son turned 2, I just hit such a wall, and I felt really sick, and I was getting all these blood tests done, and I was just being told, "Nope, you're really healthy," and it was just kind of like, well, I feel absolutely terrible. I feel like I'm dying, and no one can give me an answer. And so I guess.
And can I just ask more on that? Was it like physical, like when you say I'm dying, was it depression? Was it the, hormone imbalance, or?
It was like, honestly, everything. And that was, I think, like the answer in the end was like, oh, okay. So I had a kid and I haven't slept for 2 years. Right. So there's that. Okay. And then, and I'm like the type of parent that's like, would put them ahead of me, couldn't understand why anybody would want to sleep train their kid because that's just mean, and now I feel differently about that. But so I was just very tired and underslept. And then
And what in the beginning, initially, because I think this stuff evolves and we see different waves of nutritional and health and all of that advice. But I think, how old's, can we say his name?
yeah,
Brixton?
yeah,
How old's
Brixton.
Brixton?
He's almost 11.
He's almost 11. So we're talking about 10, 11 years ago, where I don't know that people were as invested 10, 11 years ago in the importance of sleep.
No, not at all. And I wasn't at all. And what's weird is that I grew up in a house of health people. Like health has been a part of my life since I was born. My parents were always reading books and doing detoxes and trying new things. But it was just not, it just wasn't at the forefront of my mind to do that at all.
Right.
So yeah, and things have changed very dramatically, I feel like, in even just the last 5 years of what people are talking about,
Yeah.
So anyway, to answer your question, I just think it was lack of sleep, lack of nutrition in certain ways. And then a really good friend was diagnosed with cancer, which just really upset me so tremendously. And I also had teeth removed for cosmetic reasons, but I believe now that it did something to my nervous system. And so basically, a few months after all of this, when my son was 2, 3 years old, I started to have like twitches, like thousands of twitches all over my body all day long. And so I guess that was one of the big things. And I just felt unwell. I would just have random things. I would have ringing in my ears or feel nauseous, or I'd feel like I was getting sick, like my throat would be sore, but I wouldn't actually get sick. It would just kind of just keep going endlessly. So I was having a lot of memory issues. I would not be able to think of words. It was a lot of brain fog. So I just felt very unwell, which sort of, when this finally kind of reached its peak and I felt like something's really wrong with me and I just keep getting told that I'm fine, you kind of start to just go a little bit insane. And then I did kind of reach a point where I went, I just have to start talking to people who I think are smart. I need to start digging in more. And I actually found sort of this whole other world of really intelligent people who are actually on the forefront of health and wellness. It's not just because, I used to look at things a bit black and white, like Western allopathic medicine, right? Medical, or it's sort of like Eastern hippie. And those were the only two kind of areas you could be in, right?
Yeah.
And
I will say, I think I look at it kind of the same way. And
yeah.
I was raised with parents who were always on detoxes and always trying to solve my weight through something like that. And it
Yes.
never solved. My mom would come in with you're going to go drink this ionized water and it's going to cure you of obesity. And so I would, and it was so weird, Laurén, where you'd go to this woman's guest house and she had all this electronic gadgetry. And I'm a little kid just going like, I don't want to be here at all. It's weird. And she would stick like an electrode in a bottle of water and then instruct me like nothing can touch the water. Your lips can't even touch the bottle of water. You have to pour it very cautiously into a cap and then drink that and then wash that. And it did nothing. This
Totally.
did nothing for me. And so I then grow up and I'm like, fuck that. I'm not doing any of that shit. But I think that it's like, what are you trying to solve? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm simply trying to solve obesity. So when somebody comes to me and goes like, you shouldn't be eating lectins, I'm like, why? How are they contributing to my obesity? Because that's the only thing I'm trying to solve, you know?
Yeah, totally get that. And it's funny because I had the same thing growing up. I had really bad acne as a teenager. And it was like, my mom would be like, drink that, you're take enough vitamin C and it's going to go away. And it's like, I mean, listen, I respect my parents so much, and they have also introduced me to many brilliant things. And we've on this whole journey, or whatever you want to call it, of me learning more about health and wellness. They're right there, and they actually know a lot too. But we're talking 1990s hippie solutions,
Yeah.
right? And you're just like, no, I'm 15 and I have disgusting acne, and I just want you to go freaking get me on Accutane. And I'm this vitamin isn't going to change that, and didn't. So yeah, I think it's like, it's also the bad rap that people get of, just take this one thing and it's going to cure cancer, or
Yeah. Well, yes. And in the defense of that stuff, I have a buddy with psoriasis who goes on the Gundry method. He's the lectins guy.
yeah, yeah.
And it clears up his psoriasis. He wasn't obese. He wasn't trying to, wasn't his issue. His issue was psoriasis. He goes on the Gundry method. His psoriasis goes away. He goes off of it. His psoriasis comes back. So like, I fucking get it. It's doing something for him.
Totally. Yeah. I think the main realization that I've had through all this is it's just a much bigger web than that. It's
Yeah.
like everybody has their own health web, and it's composed of many different things. It's composed of like a mental, spiritual side of whatever traumas or things you have going on. It's composed of sort of like a bacterial, microbial terrain situation that you have. And there's genetic factors of how things are being expressed by what toxins you're exposed to. So it's like, I think in some cases, a person can go off of lectins or oxalates or certain plant toxins, which I also do try to avoid because I just feel better doing that. But does it mean that everyone's issue is just going to get handled by them avoiding a plant toxin? But yes, it totally could. It's just, I just think it's so much more nuanced than that. And I feel like that's where everybody's a little bit getting it wrong of like, yes, it may sort it out, or it might take literally 200 different things, or trying and trial and error of like what works for you to make that happen.
Right. And like with something, for instance, like Lyme's, there is no standardized protocol for that, right?
Well, so the medical community doesn't even have a good way of testing for Lyme. The other really interesting thing that I learned from, working with Dr. Whitney in Los Angeles is, and it's cool because she has a kind of a different setup in her practice where she has people doing treatments in the same room so that they can talk, because Lyme is like a very community driven group where it is that thing where you're like, oh, okay, you're doing ozone, okay, or you're doing this protocol and that protocol, where you have to like try a million different things, because you can have a lot of co-infections or cousin-like bacteria. There's like the one bacteria that causes Lyme, but there's several others that you can also have, or you can have those and not even have the actual Lyme bacteria. And then your terrain is so kind of upheaved from that then you have other viruses in play, and you can have mold. And so it's just, there is no standardized way, definitely in allopathic Western medicine, to test for it. There's definitely some cool things with these more, I would call them advanced doctors. And so like that kind of leads me to what I was going to say of, you know, there's more than just the fight between Eastern and Western or medical and hippie. There's actually this sort of other area that is my area of interest, which is, I guess I'm just calling it like modern integrative medicine.
Yeah.
And it's like people, doctors who don't have a God complex, doctors who are not closed off. They might use synthetics, like something like methylene blue, which is like I do personally and love. It's actually a synthetic. It's not an herb, which we could talk about later. But they're just open to all the things. You know, they might do this herb and this treatment and then this drug to handle somebody's situation, their web, you know, as I call
Right.
it.
I like that idea of people being open to both sides, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there certainly must be some benefit from Eastern type of medicine because they've been doing it for a long time. And
For
if
sure.
it didn't work at all, I would hope they wouldn't do it anymore. And then to use, because like for Clementine, I was like kind of a staunchly anti-pharmaceutical person with no real reason. And then Clementine got diabetes, and it was like, well, she's now got to be on insulin. You know, she got it when she was 4,
Right.
which
Right.
was 15 years ago. She's got to be on insulin for the rest of her life. And this made me very grateful every day to the pharmaceutical companies for providing us with insulin, even though I think it's grossly overpriced.
Yeah.
But like I'm thankful that we have that she's still alive, you know, and then I
Totally.
go like, well, that okay, those giant corporations are not all bad if they're helping me keep my kid alive.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's just like everything. It's all nuanced and there's kind of great stuff in all of it. There's also a cancer doctor who I really admire down in Orange County. Her name's Laurén Larocca, and she's also an integrative cancer doctor. She will run these really interesting tests to see what exactly is driving your cancer. Is it hormone driven? Is it toxin driven? You know, what type of things? And then what, you know, maybe certain herbal substances could help, and then what type of chemo you should get, you know? And so I think that's super interesting because I feel like I've seen it all. It's like, it's not meant to say that you can't. There have been people who have supposedly totally cured their cancer naturally. And I love that idea. And I want that to be the case for everything so badly. But I've also seen family, friends try to do that approach and it not be successful.
Right.
And so I guess, yeah, where I've kind of landed after 7, 8 years of really studying and talking to doctors and seeing different people go through different things, that can't we just all maybe be friends and take the pearls of wisdom from everything,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to you personally. You are a couple years out from having your first kid and you're miserable and you're dying. What did you
Yeah.
do? Because you don't seem to me to be miserable and feeling like you're dying today. You seem vibrant and healthy.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm also the kind of person that really doesn't like not feeling well and really doesn't like not being happy. You know, like it's hard for me to live in that uncomfortability. And so I knew of a friend, our mutual friend, Paige Long, who was seeing a doctor who I knew was very reputable. And I just
Siddiqui.
was, yes,
We've had him on the show. He's great.
yes, like one of the most wonderful human beings on the planet.
Yeah.
And so I basically begged her to get me in with him. And she did, and he ran so many more tests than any doctor has, ever run on me. So he found old viruses, and that was kind of like one of the first clues. Because, it's interesting. It's like the concept of long COVID, which is becoming a little more broad to people, right? You have this virus where it's not totally going away, and you have these like non-ending symptoms. That was already going on with things like Epstein-Barr, and there's a number of herpes viruses that most people have. But it wasn't really on the forefront. You were kind of considered a little bit kooky. If you say, I have Epstein-Barr, people would kind of be like, what are you talking about? But it's really just like your system is out of whack. You have an opportunistic microbe, essentially, that's kind of running the show. So he tested me for things like that kind of introduced me to this concept of, you can have things that are being opportunistic, essentially, that are giving you symptoms that aren't necessarily cancer or an autoimmune disease, basically. So I started to see him, and he put me on a bunch of protocols that were really amazing. And some of it was just literally doing lymphatic drainage massages, because my nervous system was so in fight or flight mode that it was causing physical symptoms like the twitches and like insane anxiety and not being able to sleep and those kinds of things. And then really, like great vitamin IVs, because I was so depleted. And so he just got me, on his protocol, and I made huge strides just doing that. But then, I just got more curious and started digging in more. And can you have an autoimmune condition without it necessarily being a disease? So that's when I found Gundry. And I went to see Stephen Gundry in Palm Springs, and it turned out I had this very rare antibody, basically, that he was like, you don't have an autoimmune disease, but you have antibodies that you're creating. So, there was that.
Which means you're fighting something.
You're creating excess inflammation. And so it's causing also symptoms by that occurring. And then I started to kind of go down the whole Lyme road and discovered this doctor by the name of Dietrich Klinghardt, who's very famous in the Lyme area. And I worked with one of his doctors. And so it sounds like I'm a crazy person. And I do think for a while, our friends thought I was a crazy person.
Well, okay, but it would be like, let's give our symptoms to Laurén. You know what I mean? If an antibiotic isn't solving it, we need to go see her.
Definitely. And now for sure, because I'm sort of like through all of it and really do have so much knowledge. I think during the whole experience that took a couple of years for me to sort out, it's like, when someone becomes hyper aware of something, they look psychotic, but it's really just because they're so kind of like affected by the truth. That's actually how I look at where I was at the time, because you start going, oh my God, 5G and, cell phones and brain cancer and glyphosate, and all of our food is covered in pesticides. And those things are all true, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this was the reason that they made filming at industrial meat facilities illegal, because the populace sees those videos and are so horrified that it's just, you can't slow it down, which cripples an entire industry.
Totally. And I think it's like those things are all true, and we do need to be cognizant of those things and start making but maybe it's where I'm at now is a little bit in a calmer place, which is more what Dr. Sadeghi is at, where it's sort of like gentle shifts.
Right.
Like nothing is going to get solved by a person going completely psychotic. You cannot biohack your entire life in one day or 1 week or even a month. Like it's going to take time, you know? It's like you start realizing, oh shit, you know, like my pans have, you know, the nonstick pans have, they're leaching plastic into all of my food. And, you know, you just have to start like gently, gradiently changing.
Yeah.
If you want, if it interests you.
There are certain things in there where I find the argument for maintaining them to just fall apart, like plastic bottles, like our interaction with plastics and the amount of plastics that you can find on any given day in a human being.
Yeah,
And it, it's jumped beyond like somebody just saying like, hey, I think this isn't good, to like, hey, there are for sure a lot of negative consequences associated with the amount of interaction we have with plastics, especially when you're considering that we're consuming a great deal of things that are being stored in plastic.
yeah,
But again, it's a tough jump. You know what I mean?
it
Like you
is.
go to even the quote unquote health food store, most of their shit's wrapped in plastic too. So like,
So, yeah,
you know, finding meat that has not come into contact with plastic, very difficult. Um,
totally.
and you know, and then I was like, okay, well, we'll get everything from the butcher. And then somebody was like, that paper they're wrapping it in is also not good. So,
I know.
you know, it
It's
becomes,
inescapable.
yeah. And so
Yeah,
like I like Sadiki and his calm approach too, because it's like it's true. If you and this is anything for me, addiction or dealing with food or diet or anything like that. If you try to do everything in a day, it tends to fall apart. But like
totally.
here we have mostly gotten rid of using plastic bottles, which I used forever, and now you know, we have glass things that we can fill up at our tap, which has a purification. I don't even know. Brandy does all of that, but like, yeah. So we're trying to stay away from plastics.
Yes, exactly. I think it's just those little steps that, and this is only, I feel like if you find it interesting and fun to, you know, graduate from something more toxic to less toxic, or if you truly are so unwell, which is where I was, where you're just like, please, I just want this out of my life because I don't want to feel this way anymore, you know? But it's also like, if you are feeling great and you don't need the stress of this, or you just want to do one thing every so often, cool. You know, it's kind of like a personal preference.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like when I was going through all of my crazy stuff, you do get on this thing of, you know, like you want to inform everybody, and you know, because you don't want them to come into contact with this thing, or you know, I don't want my friends to put their phone to their head anymore because I don't want them to get a brain tumor, you know. But it's like now I'm way out of that. And it's interesting, it's almost even on the diet and the weight loss thing of what's your place in telling somebody else what to do and not do. And really, at the end of the day, it's kind of just like, I just want to be the unlicensed medical practitioner that's here for you if you want to call me and ask me things, because I spend a lot of time and my money researching things to hopefully help people who care to know, you know?
Yeah. I think it's also like our experience is amplified in our own mind no matter what. And so like you could look at the stats of how dangerous riding motorcycles are,
Yeah.
But if you get into a motorcycle accident or you hit somebody who's on a motorcycle and they die and you have some traumatic experience with a motorcycle, you're going to be more likely to be running around going,
Fully.
guys, you can't fucking, they're really dangerous. Motorcycles are really, don't do it. You
Yeah.
know, like a shark attack. It's super, super rare. If a fucking shark bit me, I would be screaming at people, get out of the water. You know what I mean? Like, don't swim.
Totally.
Um,
Totally.
and I think this goes down to anything like there are people who are dogmatically, religiously keto. And it's like,
Yes.
I'm fucking happy if that's working for you.
Yes.
But like, that doesn't mean everybody has to be keto, you know?
Yes, that is such a good point. And I was thinking that too, that yeah, when you have your own personal experience with something, it really is magnified. And, or you think, this is what solved my problem, so it's going to solve your problem,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm so thoroughly actually disabused of all that now. And it's like such a better place to be where I could see if you want to be carnivore and that makes you feel amazing, great. If you want to drink green juice all day and that's what makes you feel amazing, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, people get
Clementine,
very fixated on the thing that they think worked for them, you know?
totally. Clementine has such a strong interest in carnivore.
Yeah.
And then even that, we started talking to, I do have some friends who do carnivore, and we started talking to them. And even in carnivore, there are rifts. And
Oh my God.
it was crazy.
The biggest fights in carnivore.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Like
And then,
one
yeah,
guy
sorry, go ahead.
said, squash is a fruit and you can eat it. And another guy's like, fucking fruit isn't carnivore. And like, then there's the lion diet people. And I was just like, oh my God, my head is going to explode.
Oh my God, it's so amazing because I know you've had Paul Saladino on your show, and even he, who was so dogmatically meat only for a few years, and then he started to be like, oh shit, like I can't remember what it was. He then had to supplement with so much potassium that I think his arm got numb or something. And then anyway, he realized he had such an electrolyte imbalance, him personally, that he was like, I got to start introducing fruit. And so now he has fruit and he has honey and he has maple syrup. And so then it's like the lion diet people are furious. So yeah, the
I just,
nuances.
I've been fascinated at like my friend's list of fruits who's doing carnivore, and he's like, yeah, avocado's a fruit and this is a fruit. And then Clementine made the mistake of saying, wow, okay, great, this is easy. Tomatoes are a fruit. And he was like, no, nightshades are bad. And it was just like, so many little narrow hallways where like all
I
fruit
know.
is okay except certain fruits, you know?
Yep. Yep. Totally. I know. It's intense. It's really intense.
Yeah, I do like imagining squash as a fruit because I never considered it a fruit.
Well, it's also strange because in the Gundry world, squash is actually considered a high lectin.
Wow.
Yes, food. So I didn't eat it for several years because I was doing, the plant paradox diet. And then when I kind of shifted gears later into more of, I'll just say animal based, not carnivore, because I was doing more like Paul Saladino vibe. Then he's like, yeah, have your squash. So I just think it's like there are so many funny little boxes that we
Yeah.
can go into. And I think it's really just like, do you feel good eating it or do you not? You
Right.
know?
Yeah, and this similarly is for the other side with like vegans. I remember going out to dinner with a vegan once, and then coming to find out, I just assumed I know everything about this person and their needs, and then it was revealed to me that everything also had to be raw, and I was like, how so? and I literally said to him, "What does that mean? Just salad?" And he was like, "No, I eat lots of stuff, dehydrated." And there's like some special process to cook
Yes,
things at 118 degrees for a long time, and
yes,
suddenly it's still raw somehow. And yeah, so these little nuances exist in all of it.
all of it. And I love all the fights, and I don't love them, but it's
It's
comical,
entertaining.
honestly. It
Yeah.
is, it is. And it's fascinating because every substance is a fight. I
Yeah.
mean, like, there is not one substance that isn't debated. There's a debate on everything: coffee, raw dairy, fish oil. I mean, the fights about fish oil, how strong people are about fish oil it's crazy.
Is
So,
there an argument against fish oil other
oh,
than vegans?
oh,
Really?
yes, 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 yes. So, I mean, even in the carnivore camp, I mean, it's a lot of people say it's rancid.
Hmm.
Also, there's just the piece about how you're not just getting it from a whole food, it's too much. Just have a piece of fish once a week or whatever. There's a lot of debate on fish oil.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't believe any one of these things is so, you know,
Heated, heated.
yeah. So have you fixed your sleep?
Yeah, so it's much better. By the time, this all kind of went down 2016. By the time I hit 2019, it was about a 2.5 year period of me digging and trying different things and doing different tests and doing different modalities. By the time 2019 came, I was like, I'm good. I no longer was producing antibodies. I'm sorry, I had no, autoimmune symptoms. My blood tests were clean on that. I just felt much more like in a state of my God, not hormesis, a state of just things being regulated, and so then I just wanted to have another baby, so I had another baby, and that was really interesting because I gained more weight in my second pregnancy than I ever did. I felt fine, like not unwell sick, but I sort of for the first time was like, I'm overweight and like struggling.
And let me ask you a question. I remember this pregnancy. You were kind of eating not on a regimen, weren't you? Am I wrong? Were you
Yeah,
not
so
eating like I can eat whatever I want?
I wasn't doing whatever I want, like eating 20 pizzas and ice cream. I was eating whole foods, nutrient dense foods. Like I was having, liver in my ground beef, and I was like very high fat, which I still think is super healthy and eat high fat, but it was over the pandemic, so I wasn't going anywhere. I also wasn't allowed to exercise because in both of my pregnancies, like I carry very low. So he doesn't want me to exercise and actually my second pregnancy, he came 3 weeks early.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't allowed to exercise, couldn't go anywhere. And I just was eating like, lasagna that I made, but it's like, it's just a lot of carbs and calories and it's a lot of food.
Yeah. No, and this was surprising to me, I think to many of your friends, simply because like I think stuff like pasta had been off the menu for a long time.
I mean, it was gluten-free pasta, I will say that. But yes, the thing is, I'm not personally in agreement with any type of, for me, doing a vegetarian or like a vegan type pregnancy is off the table for me. I have to do high protein, high fat, just in life in general.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but yes, I definitely was like, I haven't had a grain in like 3 years. And I was just nauseous and starving and just kind of like, I'm good now. So I kind of just like let myself, I was cooking everything at home. So it was all organic and, higher quality food, but there was no uh, structure, even though I don't even want to say now I have structure, but it's just how I would describe it is when I'm pregnant, something has fully taken over my body and I just don't feel the same way. I'm kind of so nauseous that I can't eat in the same way that I do when I'm not pregnant.
Yeah. So I try to think back, and it's been a while since Brandy was pregnant. And I definitely remember her eating differently, but nothing like specific,
Yeah.
like some things she it was just kind of inconsistent. It wasn't like she started loving chocolate and then got pregnant and hated chocolate. She was just maybe a little pickier. Um, Bella, meanwhile, and she had to break this to me kind of gently because because it was so weird. But Bella, her entire life, Christmas Day, I make a prime rib, and she loved rare meat, loved it, and I would get chastised if I cooked it to medium because she'd be like, "You ruined Christmas dinner." Um, and somehow like the only thing or the main topic that we would share on social media was like pictures of steak houses and delicious cuts of meat and Japanese, A5 Wagyu and all of this. And she and I continued to share that. And then she had to tell me like, hey, just so you know, since I had Boone, my granddaughter, I can't eat red meat anymore. And it's so baffling to me. She just kind of lost the taste for it and is like
Yeah.
completely disinterested. So it is interesting how pregnancies and stuff like that can affect the body.
Yeah. It's really weird. Yeah. So yeah, it takes over and it's not like you're intending for it to be that way, but it does,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of Bella, that's her photograph.
Yeah. It's awesome. I saw that.
Anyway, so yeah, so after my 2019, well, actually 2019 to 2020 pregnancy, I was up about 60 pounds. And then my lower back, my whole like pelvis was very out of whack. And it took, a long time for me to get it back. I didn't get back to me for like 2 years. But I did kind of just like an animal-based whole foods approach. I didn't do any radical dieting. I just tried to be as nutrient dense as possible. And I sort of like got back to me in 2022. And it was cool because I felt like I didn't have to go insane. I didn't have to do a radical diet. I didn't have to stop myself. I just sort of like gently got back. So it was cool. I kind of let myself have fun and I didn't make myself feel bad about it. I just did what I needed to do at the time to get through it. And then I just kind of gently worked my way back.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that that's good. I mean, if you're pregnant and your body is saying, I need this thing, I just think it's probably a fine line because you could have no data or training or experience in any of this and go like, well, I'm pregnant, I'm going to do whatever I want and just eat Oreo cookies.
totally.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Which you might
Yeah.
have a bad gestational diabetes or something turn on from that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I definitely think, aiming for skinny pregnancies is not the smartest thing to do. And it's like, I would rather truly be overweight from a pregnancy and have to work hard or whatever to get it handled later than causing some issue. And actually, I've heard that the kid will just take, minerals from your bones. So really in the end, you're just doing yourself a disservice. So I'd rather be a little overweight from the situation than be so depleted that you could have weight and major hormonal and bone issues even, and I know so many people who have major cavities after pregnancy because they were so low on minerals. So
right. Yeah.
yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Um, So I don't know, 10 years ago, I went on a hunting trip and we stayed in this cabin, and one of my buddies um, showed up a day late because he had to go and rent a camper and drive it up because sleep was so vitally important to him. And I remember thinking at the time, like, what a moron. Um, and he had regulated the sound and the temperature and everything. And then, like, cut to today, where there are people who are advocating for the importance of sleep in a very, very serious fashion, like
Yeah.
laying out uh things in order of magnitude, and sleep is almost always at the top. Get good sleep. Like, everything else should be come later. Try to tackle these things after sleep. So in that way, what do you think the next big thing is? Do you have any
Um,
insight to that? Like, what we're going to see coming down the pike in?
you mean as the next like health
Yeah,
trend or modality?
yeah.
Well, I would say I think this is it, but it's also happens to be kind of my area of interest right now, which is um, immune modulation and mitochondrial enhancement, basically. And what I mean by that is there are kind of these modalities that are like panacea modalities. So meaning like, okay, if in the past, and I'm not knocking all this, I still love all of this, but let's just say, you were going to get a cold. And so people would say, do vitamin C and elderberry or whatever, like they would recommend.
Echinacea,
Yes,
something like,
like it's
yeah.
an herb. It's one thing or a couple of things. Now we're kind of getting into the bigger picture situation of how can we actually kind of like fix our immune systems and our mitochondria that are struggling right now because our planet is so toxic, right? And our as I like was telling you about before, of you get these opportunistic microbes, whether it's parasites or bacteria or viruses, which start to kind of like take hold in your system, and things get really out of whack. So instead of just cherry picking, oh, you have Epstein-Barr, you have Lyme, or you have this herpes virus, or you have this parasite, right? Which is still fine and fun, and I like all of that. But there's kind of like a higher level approach that I feel is like the new modern wave that's really kind of been ramping up over the last 5-7 years, which is like in peptide therapy, which also kind of includes like stem cells and exosomes, ozone therapy, things like methylene blue, which is like it's very inexpensive compared to other things, like, stem
I,
cells and exosomes are really expensive.
I've heard on Rick Rubin's podcast, Dr. Jack Krause, Kruse,
Cruise, yeah,
Kruse, talk about methylene blue. What is
yeah.
methylene blue?
So methylene blue is a dye salt. It's a synthetic substance. It is not natural. That was like discovered in the 1800s. And actually, one of the ways that it was discovered as something special was there were these factory workers that worked with the dye. And they were like the only ones who weren't getting sick with some virus. And so they discovered that this dye has kind of magical properties. And then it was used as an anti-malaria drug in World War I and World War II. And it just has kind of all these really interesting uses, and it's not expensive. Like I do what's called a push of it. It's not an IV that drips down. It's like in a, tube like this big, and they can also activate it with like red light and UV light, and then it gets pushed in a vein, so it's quick.
Wow.
And so it just does all these really interesting things. It's antiviral, it's antimicrobial, It's your mitochondria actually is attracted to it. So it actually can upregulate, ATP production, the energy that your cells make. So they have just found like a million things. It helps with like neurological issues. It helps with depression. It can help with a lot of mental and neurological problems. They've seen it help with Alzheimer's, autism. So it's definitely kind of getting a lot of attention right now.
Right. And that's a drug that's already been on the market.
For a very long time, since the 1800s, I think it's been around.
Right. Wow.
And it supposedly has no side effects.
Wow.
So it's like, a lot of pharmaceuticals, the reason why the health community is not a fan of a lot of pharmaceuticals are the side effects. What problem is it causing to another area by fixing this thing, So supposedly this doesn't cause any issues to other areas by using it.
Yeah, I think there's always the cost benefit analysis.
Yes.
With all of these things. Like, you have a drug, you treat 1,000 people with it. If 995 of them get better and 5 of them die, that's okay.
Right.
I think that's kind of how they do it. I mean, those are gross, probably hyperbolic examples, but like zero side effects is great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited about those things. I did a lot of peptides about 5 years ago when I was kind of getting better. Now I feel like it's just like exploding. Like there are just so many freaking peptides and so many cool things that they can do. There's a really cool doctor by the name of Kent Holtorf, he would be fun to have on your show because he is like the father of peptides. I actually would like to go see him. He's, I think, in El Segundo here. But anyway, it's just really interesting. I just like this stuff because you realize that there's always something you can do. You never have to feel like there's no hope, because it just makes me sad when you go and you Google something and the results you get are so dismal and sad, and your only option is take this drug and you can't do anything about it. And I just think there's so much more that's, being hidden somewhat or, not made readily available, but it is there. You just have to kind of dig a little bit.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the guy's name. He's I believe he is or was like a conservative pundit, newspaper author and talking head who was very much like a by the books mainstream science guy, then got Lyme's disease, wrote a whole book. It's fucking tragic that I can't remember his name. He's a kind of a famous guy. And basically he's saying like, I got this thing that nobody could diagnose, that nobody could figure out. I was having real severe problems in my life. And then he went and did some of these kind of, what you're talking about, where East meets West medicine stuff, and it straightened him out. And he took antibiotics were part of it.
Totally. That can be part of the protocol depending on what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just acupuncture and tea.
And like light therapy, which I'm not knocking any of those things, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to me. And I think we are, with guys like Andrew Huberman, who people like to come after, but like, I don't think he's hurting anybody. And even Peter Attia, these guys are really kind of bridging that gap in the mainstream.
Totally. Even Dave Asprey, I feel like Dave he's just about the hack, like what actually works, what actually is going to fix the problem. Do we have to be upset that it's acupuncture or that it's a drug? Can we just do the thing, whatever it is that works?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I like it. So I want to make sure we have time for me to turn the
Okay.
tables
Yeah.
and
Turn the tables. Let's go.
I want to Oprah Winfrey you a little bit
All right.
today before we run out of time.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Okay. Okay. So first question is, what exactly brought on Ethan 2.0, as I call you in my head? Like, what brought this on? What brought on like the big change? Or was there one, or was it just more of a shift over time?
I think it was a shift over time. Like there was getting sober in 2001. And then there was like more than a year spent like getting my sea legs in sobriety, kind of like, because I had tried to get sober a number of times, and you kind of sequester yourself away and you're in a very safe environment with none of the things that are reminding you of why you were doing drugs. You know, it's very peaceful, and you're at rehab, and then you come out and you're back in the real world, and nothing's set up really for you to succeed. And so I kept finding myself relapsing. And then I finally was like, oh, I have to like actually alter my life. I can't be going out to nightclubs and expect that I'm going to stay sober. So maybe nightclubs are out. Um, and then, you know, my friends who were still junkies, like I probably shouldn't be hanging out with them if I'm trying to be sober. And so that took a couple of years. And in 2001, I kind of started to figure it out. And by 2002, it was one of those things where I woke up, you know, and there were a few things that kind of steered me towards this, but I realized, oh, there's a whole other, the building's still on fire, right? Like I put out the fire in one room, but another room's on fire. I got to go deal with that. And that was my weight. And so I kind of tried and failed to get that under control for a long time. And I didn't want to talk about it. I was very uncomfortable talking about it. But finally in 2019, I guess, I had been the same weight for a couple of years, and I had done similar to what you've done, where I've done all these diets. Like, what has worked for me with my specific goals in mind, and why has that worked? And what else did I do that was necessary? Um, and so I just started talking about it. You know, I guess that's how I could answer that question.
Cool. That's awesome. And I have a question actually about addiction.
Yeah.
Like what what do you think addiction means? Like, how do you define addiction? And part two to that is like, how could somebody identify for themselves whether or not they have an addiction?
So yeah, this is interesting. So there's like a couple ways to think about addiction, right? There's the addiction that is like your body is physiologically dependent on a substance, right? Like I am still clinically, technically, literally addicted to nicotine, though I haven't smoked in 18 years. Brandy made me quit when she was pregnant with Clementine. I quit, but I never, I gave up nicotine for like a year at one point, but I am still woefully a nicotine addict. But when I think about addiction in a negative sense, I'm not having bad repercussions because of my relationship with nicotine today. And in fact, every year there's more and more data released about
I
how
know.
it's not all that bad for you.
I
Nicotine
know.
on its own, it's the
Yeah.
inhaling of carcinogenic smoke that's really bad for you.
Which
Um,
even that, by the way, us speaking about the debates, there's plenty of people in the health community that will say smoking's anti-parasitic.
right, right. And
So,
so it's your trade-off, right?
yeah.
Do you want to get rid of your parasites? By the way, I love the health community because like we're anti-parasitic, and then there'll be an argument for like introducing hookworms to cure
Oh,
your
oh,
allergies,
definitely. For sure, for sure, for
which
sure.
is so good. I
Yeah.
remember at one point when Clementine, she was 4, And there was like a minute where I was like, I'm going to take her to Africa and have her march around in latrines with no shoes on just to get some hookworms in her,
Yeah.
um, to fuck this diabetes up. And I'm really glad I did not do that. Um, but yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
addiction, the type of addiction for me, so heroin, you can be physiologically addicted to heroin. Um, but like I don't think we need to eradicate opiates from hospitals because I don't think everybody uses them in the same way. I think in order to
Yeah.
get physiologically addicted, the primary use for me of drugs and alcohol and even food was a discomfort in the present that I was trying to alleviate through that substance. So whether it
Wow.
be like social anxiety and I'm eating to make myself feel more comfortable, or just general melancholy that food will make me feel better, drugs, I had food my whole life, and that was kind of my reality, was like life is uncomfortable and food makes me feel better, so I'm going to keep eating it. And then the minute I found opiates and cocaine, those made me feel so much better. And then the combination of it all, like, I can eat and have my little sense of relief from that, but I can also do dope and have just such a wonderful relief from the discomfort of life and living and being present. So that's what it is for me. It's kind of like a shield that guards me. It emotionally steadies me out. It handles all my anxieties. And so really kind of the battle with those things is trying to remain present and experience that discomfort and realize that I'm okay in that experience.
Beautifully said. That's
Yeah.
very cool. And how do you feel about interventions?
Yeah, interventions are tricky. So I've had a number of interventions. Always, like, I remember Kevin Connolly once kind of hinted at an intervention with my weight. I think that was when, yeah, Chris Farley died. There was like I got there was an attempt at like, let's have a conversation. And I shut it down real quick. But then when it was about drugs, I did have a number of times that I walk into a room with a number of my closest friends, just sitting in a circle staring at me like, we're here to talk to you. Um, so I think many different ways about it, but here's like, if I'm trying to be very open to everything, I don't know that they work. I
Mm.
don't believe that people tend to change until they decide to
Yeah,
for themselves. And I don't think any amount of begging or pleading will make that decision happen. However, I also think that um, the people who are witnessing this stuff that they feel they need to intervene with have every right to say something and should
yeah,
say something, if they feel that that's the correct thing to do. Uh, I just think the expectation can't be that by saying something, I'm going to cure this guy or set him on the path. I think
right,
that's the mistake, because then you're just disappointed. And then you get into, why did I say anything? Well, if you say something knowing that it's the right thing for you to do, period. And then I also think that, like, down the line, the interventions that I had, um, they meant something later on, like in the moment, I whatever I said to get it to be over, because it was so painful. Um, I don't think it had an immediate effect on me then getting right onto the path. Even though, like, at one point, my friends, I was about to leave for a movie, and they said, like, if you don't agree to get sober and take a sober living coach with you to this movie, we're going to tell the producers and they're going to fire you. Right. And so, like, out of fear, I was like, yeah. And so there was a minute where I technically got the drugs out of my system for a couple of weeks and then did a whole PR of like, I'm better now, I'm cured, send the sober living companion away, and then started doing drugs again.
Yeah.
Um, but I do believe that later when I'm on the path and I have made the decision for myself in those times when it's really, really hard, I can think of all the people that I know care about me and love me and are rooting for me. And so there's where the value was for me. Um, I just think a lot of times like parents and spouses and loved ones and brothers and siblings and boyfriends and girlfriends and friends go into these interventions with such a desperation and a need for the person to get better and to realize that that might not be the outcome from the intervention. But
Right.
if you're just okay with like telling them that you're aware of what's going on and that you love them and that you have a need and telling them your feelings, it's absolutely fair game to do that.
And would you do that? Like, if you had a friend that you felt like it was having an addiction or it was affecting their life or those around them, would you do that? Or would you kind of hang back and wait until they said something to you? How would you approach it these days?
Well, yeah, I guess that's a good question, and it depends on. I've had people come to me and say, like, "Will you talk to my kid?" And that I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
If your kid wants to talk to me, I'm more than willing to talk to my kid. But like, if Brandy or one of my kids or one of my best friends was doing something that I felt was really detrimental to their life, for sure I would say something.
Yeah.
I just would go into it knowing, it gets a little bit trickier when it's your spouse. Like if we're talking about your wife or your husband, and it's like, maybe you have to build up some barriers. If you have a spouse who is using drugs and is not reliable and is putting your family into liability, then just saying, I want you to get clean and sober might not be enough. You might need to say, like, hey, I need to limit your time with our kids because I get worried that you're going to harm them.
Right.
So I think that all those are valid, but I would absolutely say something to somebody, but then I also have to play the devil's advocate, because like I don't drink. Most of my friends drink. I do have a group of sober friends, but like if I go out to dinner with somebody and they get drunk, that doesn't mean that they're an alcoholic
Right.
because that was my experience. So I have to really be careful of projecting my experience on other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Um, I wanted to ask you about just motivation. And my first question is like, what do you think? Because, I kind of I get a lot of questions from people of wanting to get healthy or they're worried about something or they have this symptom or whatever. And I feel like I even struggle sometimes with they want my advice, but then I sort of give it, but then I feel like they don't really do anything, which is okay. Like I don't have any emotion on that. I don't care, if you take what I have to say and you don't find value in it, like no problem. But I guess, what do you think is the reason or the roadblock for people in just getting motivated or wanting to be healthy?
I think the best motivation is success. And I think that the trouble is I think it's almost human nature, certainly modern human nature, to want immediate gratification.
Yeah,
And
so
so
true.
and so we go after the whole picture, like we talked about earlier. Like I want to get healthy, so I'm going to get rid of my cell phone. I'm going to wear glasses when I'm on the computer, right? Red glasses, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend most of my day outside. The rest of my life is going to fall apart in pursuit of this health. And then like week 2, you're like, I can't fucking live like this, and it all goes away. And so I really think that if you can tackle one small thing, if you can implement one small thing, like I liken it to tying your shoes or brushing your teeth. If I hope that's a part of your daily routine, and well, you're a chick, maybe you're just slipping on high heels. I don't know, but like you've tied shoes, you know how to do that. You brush your teeth, I hope, because dental hygiene, as we know
Yes.
now, is super, super
Oh,
important,
very
right? This is
important.
kind of new too. Um, Not
Yeah.
that dentists haven't been screaming about that forever,
Yeah.
but like you got to go back to imagining yourself as a little kid who had never brushed their teeth and go like day one, you weren't an expert at it. And this is like a 2-minute segment of your day we're talking about. So is there something small like that that you can start adding in, realizing you're not going to be perfect at it on day one, that it's going to be time spent cultivating this as a habit, and then move on to something else once you're successful and build it out that way. Every diet I ever did that was like just eat 1,500 calories a day, great, I can do that for 2 months. But after 2 months, I've not gotten anything set up to living the rest of my life in a healthy way. And
Yeah.
so I would gain the weight back. And it's like, maybe you're better off, honestly, focusing on sleep. Let's figure out your sleep. How do you improve your sleep? Start getting more sleep. Then like maybe a good step one is like limiting, not even excluding entirely, but how do we just cut back on processed foods? How do we add
Yeah.
more whole foods into your diet? Knowing that neither of those things is going to solve you entirely, that there's a roadmap to, if you're morbidly obese, at some point, if you want to get down to like a quote unquote normal or healthy weight, you are going to have to restrict your quantities to some degree,
Right.
because we don't lose weight in a linear fashion. I mean, it's been proven over and over again. Everybody could get to their goal weight if they eat only like 800 calories a day. Nobody maintains that weight. It's just not
Right.
done. There's not even anecdotal examples of this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, if we start way more subtly and approach it that way, knowing like maybe I'm going to work at this kind of stuff for a year and then start to think about like lessening my foods, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
moving into meat based or whatever, but like just going from I eat fast food 3 times a day, I don't sleep, I spend most of my free time on my phone, to no more phone, trying to sleep, like spending 12 hours in search of 8, right? And probably not even getting 8, but you're spending so much time in bed, it's fucking
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think like small success is a really great motivator, and allowing yourself to go like turn like I'm sure you, when you went to your first doctor, were like, I want this turned around this week. I want to feel better
Totally.
this week. And then
Yes.
4 or 5 years later, you're like, I feel good. You know what I mean? Like it just takes a while to get to a point where like I can do this. It's not ruining my life. I can live like this forever and I actually feel okay. Dieting for massive weight loss can be that. You don't
Yeah.
have to be in some extreme deficit where you're miserable, where the rest of your life
I
is suffering.
agree.
Yeah,
Well, it's just not sustainable, you
right.
know. I feel like any of these things, for it to really work, has to be sustainable. And that's, I think, where just the one thing a day approach really does make sense, because you cannot even change that many habits at once. You know, it's
No,
like when I want to introduce some new thing, I feel like it takes me, you know, a couple of weeks to get used to doing that new thing now every day or whatever it is, until it really becomes part of your life and you're just naturally doing it, or you're, you know, it's really working.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the only supplement that I've consistently taken, I guess you could consider whey protein powder a supplement too, but like I took whey for a long time. Then I introduced creatine. The creatine goes in the whey. It's super fucking easy. But every time I go like I'm gonna do like magnesium and fish oil and you know, there was one other one, I can't even remember what it's called, but like then it's like, well, you got to take it with a meal.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Whey protein
Or
water
away
doesn't
from
work,
food.
or
Yeah,
away
yeah,
from food.
yeah, yeah.
And I always want to come at it with 3 different or 4 or 5 different things, and I'm just, I do it one day and then it's done. Where I know if I just go like, okay, I'm just introducing fish oil. That's it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would like to get my fish oil up.
yeah,
I would be more successful at that.
yeah. I agree. And it's funny you actually mentioned creatine because I was going to get to this. Do you take it regularly?
Every day.
Okay. And you don't have any bad reactions from it?
No, I never have.
Because I started doing a more weightlifting type of routine lately because I'm really trying to build now. I was just doing like my own body weight type stuff for a long time. And then I was like, I'm going to start taking creatine and I'm going to like really build. And I just was like having crazy heart palpitations from it. And
Really?
so I guess some people are more sensitive and it can dehydrate you and
Yes.
take more of your electrolytes. So maybe I just need to get that more dialed in somehow.
Well, is this just 5 grams a day, or were you
Yeah.
trying to
Oh
preload it?
no. Yeah. 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like it does draw water out of your system and into muscles. So
Right.
certainly there are suggestions on how much water you're supposed to drink when taking creatine, or increase your water. So that's
Okay.
for sure accurate. And then I always take 5 grams. I take 5 grams a day, every day, almost the
Wow.
same time every day, and I've never had an issue. Um, but I wonder if you spaced it out. You know what I mean? Which again, it becomes a pain in the ass. Who the fuck wants to take
I'll do it though, because I'm not kind of a person,
right? And
who
you could
I'll
take
mess around with it.
1 gram at a time, spread out, and see how that, because it doesn't have to all get into your system at the same time. But if you're getting 4 to 5 grams per day, that should give you the benefits of it.
That's a good idea. And are you taking electrolytes?
No,
Okay.
I was in Mexico recently. It was extraordinarily hot, and I did take electrolytes one day, but like on a daily basis, no, I don't
Okay.
take them.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, this actually leads me to some more fun day-to-day lifestyle questions that I
Okay.
have.
Okay.
Okay, so what is your morning routine?
Get up, brush my teeth, take my dog out. Hopefully the sun is up. Definitely like to get a little sunlight. I
Yeah.
don't like meditate or ground or anything like that, but I often think like I should take my shoes off and walk in the grass. I just don't happen to do that always, but on days that I remember to, I do it. Um, and then I go to the gym. That's my morning routine. I get uh, a scoop of whey protein, a 5 gram scoop of creatine in water. There is some evidence that creatine's more beneficial, or more, your body is more likely to absorb all of it immediately if you take it after a workout, but it doesn't really matter. And so I
Interesting.
take it before my workout. Yeah.
And do you drink coffee?
I drink about 1 cup of coffee a day. I will say I sometimes, for a pre-workout before my workout, I will have a 5 hour energy drink because it has vitamins and caffeine. And that's how I tell Brandy I've gotten my vitamins for the day.
Awesome. And then, okay, so what are you going to the gym 7 days a week?
6.
Okay, so you always have one rest day.
Yeah.
And then on the rest day, are you going for a walk or just like, no, like,
I I I'm not intentionally doing anything because it's a rest day. And so like it depends on where I am. If I'm in New York, we walk a lot every day. And in fact, I walk so much in New York, it screws up my leg days because my legs are always not recovered from the last leg day because we're getting like 20,000 steps in every day.
yeah,
And um, but like I want to do something active. So if it's pickleball or going to the beach or going on a walk, I try to get that in, but there's nothing set for that day. Typically that's Sunday, but that can even get screwed up.
Okay. And on the 6 gym days, are you lifting and doing cardio all those days?
I've been trying to, yes, lifting and cardio. So right now, lately, I've been trying to do my cardio on a rowing machine, and that I'll separate from the gym a little bit. But if I'm not going to do that, I'll just do the elliptical machine at the gym.
Okay. And then you're lifting, you're changing different, areas each day. You're rotating.
Yeah, chest, back, legs, or chest, legs, back, and then just repeat it.
And did you initially start working with a trainer to learn all of these things, or how did you do this to get
I,
started?
yeah, getting started was 2004. Brandy bought me a package with Eric the trainer,
I remember that.
and I did not want to go and was miserable. And that was kind of my first experience lifting weights. Fuck, that was 20 years ago. And so I worked out with him a lot. Um, and then I became obsessed with cardio and was just doing cardio for a number of years. And then I got back into doing weights, but just was doing like bro workouts. And then I got super
Wait, what constitutes a bro workout?
like really just walking into the gym and going, well, I feel like doing this, so I'll just do this, or like trying to hit every muscle group in a workout, but then going back every day. Um, and I was when I got back into lifting weights, I was doing a TV show in San Francisco, and I just wanted bigger traps. So I like got 2 sessions with a personal trainer there and said, here's what I want to focus on. We did these 2 workouts, and then I would just go every day and repeat that stuff. And then when that ended, um, I just got interested in lifting weights and would study and read books about weightlifting and found like periodization and and um progressive overload, and applied those principles and just started tracking it. And so I did that for a number of years, and that was like the best results I'd ever had in the gym. And then for a photo shoot, I worked with a guy who's just like a total expert bodybuilder for about a year. And he programmed my workouts and we worked together. And then I did this photo shoot and then was just kind of exhausted by how much focus I
Yeah,
was putting into it. And so now I'm not trying to grow my muscles any bigger. I'm not trying to get stronger, but I work out kind of until I feel better. And when I have like a boost of energy, I call it quits.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah. If I did one exercise and I was like, I feel better, I would say, fuck off. You have more work to do. And so I try to
Yeah,
get like 4 to 5 exercises in each session.
cool.
Yeah.
And protein wise, are you in the camp of like you're doing the grams per body weight, pound of body weight? Are you doing that?
I'm, I I mean, I try to just be protein forward with all my meals. So there was a long time where I was eating 100%, 250 grams of protein every day for sure. And now, my protein sources are whey protein, egg whites, non-fat Greek yogurt, lean ground beef, chicken breast, fish, tuna, stuff like that. And I'd probably, like, if I counted it all up, am maybe getting 200 grams a day or 225, but I'm also not dieting right now. So I think and I'm not trying to build muscle. I'm just trying to maintain it. Um, but like when I was dieting severely, I was eating at least 2 pounds of meat a day. I'm not eating that much meat, but I'm making up for it with Greek yogurt and whey protein, which I have like two, um, I call them shakes, but it's just like I'll take water and throw a dollop of Greek yogurt in it and protein powder and shake it up, and that'll be my shake.
Yeah, Cool. Yeah. I've been working on really getting my protein in since I started doing weights more. It's
Yeah.
hard.
If
It's
you're
hard to get it.
trying to build muscle, it's
Yeah.
super important. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm trying to really do food based, and it's hard too because I'm in the high fat camp of things too, which then you're like kind of in a battle between, well, do I want high protein or do I want high fat, you
Yeah.
know? So it's
Yeah.
like when I have eggs, I'm been so used to having more yolk, you
Right.
know? So, you know, it's been kind of like I've been trying to work that out for myself.
Yeah. I mean, like, honestly, you can find, I think I just talked to Clementine about this. It's not super cheap, but there is um raw grass-fed protein powder.
Yeah, I have some.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's super easy.
Yeah.
I believe it doesn't taste good. Like I really love my Skippy peanut butter flavored rise protein powder that's just chock full of fucking ingredients. Um, but and yogurt is a great source of protein. Can you eat
Yeah.
yogurt?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I know what you mean. There's also a thing like if you're trying to stay in ketosis, protein will knock you out of ketosis.
yeah. I'm not so much trying to do ketosis anymore either. I mean, I think it would be cool to do it periodically.
Sure.
I think for me, at least, and some women and some people in general, that constant state of ketosis can wreck your hormones. I feel like I think there's so much cool data about it and what it can do for certain conditions. But I also feel like just day to day, for me, I don't think I can do it every single day anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
with fasting.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll get too skinny, and then it's kind of like, I don't know that I'm actually getting enough nutrition,
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
just like balancing all that out.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some fun kind of rapid fire Ethan questions.
Okay.
Okay, you're stranded on a desert island and you can only have one piece of workout equipment. What do you bring?
Holy fuck. One piece of workout
Yeah,
equipment.
just one.
Like, can I have a cage? Is that a piece of workout equipment?
No, well, that's a good question. I maybe it's
You can get
one
everything
thing,
done with a cage.
one thing from that. Like, is it a back thing from there? Is it just a free weight? Is it a band? Is it
I
a
think
treadmill?
right. If I'm stranded on a desert island, I'm probably going to be active enough that I don't need to fucking worry about exercise. I would hope. That's
Okay.
my hope. And so
Okay.
like maybe a kettlebell,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, favorite song to work out to.
Um Idols has this band Idols. 9 Inch Nails, March of the Pigs.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. If you had to eat one food only for every meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Steak.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's literally my answer.
Yeah. Because I think I could, you're gonna get sick of it after a while, but I would be okay.
Yeah, I do. I think we would be pretty freaking healthy
Yeah.
and muscular.
Yeah. If it was broccoli or something like that,
No,
you're
no,
not gonna survive.
no,
Pasta, it's no good.
no, no. Okay. Um, you can only choose one, sauna or ice bath.
Well, I think that there's more evidence that sauna is more beneficial.
I agree.
So in that sense, I choose sauna. I fucking hate going in the sauna. And I don't leave the sauna feeling great. I leave the sauna
Interesting.
feeling like shit. I leave the ice
Interesting.
bath feeling great. I think that isn't actually physiologically beneficial. My theory on the ice bath is you get in and your body says you're going to die pretty soon. Get the fuck out of here. and you're like, fuck you, I'm going to muscle through this. And then you get out and your body goes, here's a reward for getting out of
Yeah.
danger. And it floods you with endorphins and dopamine and you feel so great. But I don't know that it's doing a whole lot more than that, but I believe sauna is actually doing more than that. So I would have to go with sauna.
Yeah. And might I recommend trying maybe a binder like charcoal when you do the sauna, because you might be, flushing out certain toxins that then just get recirculated.
Right.
So anyway, when
What
I
does
do the
that mean?
sauna, taking
Taking
charcoal or chlorophyll or chlorella or zeolite, like something that binds up toxins that you're releasing in the sauna.
Yeah, I'd
Is your
never even heard
sauna a
of that.
traditional sauna or infrared?
We don't even have a sauna at this house,
Okay, okay.
Laurén. We used to have an infrared sauna.
Because infrared does very deep detox. It goes actually into your bones, so it can really release stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, but Brandy keeps threatening to put a sauna in, and I wanted a traditional, but you're saying infrared is better?
Yeah. I mean, I
Okay.
just think if you're going to spend the money, it's like you're hitting two birds with one stone, because you can get the sweat and the extra detox. It's a lot more healing, in my opinion.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I will also honestly say we did have a sauna at our last house. I never once went into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a total pain in the ass. And it's like, I love it, but I have two issues. One is I actually can't do it more than like twice a week, because I lose electrolytes. It's like the same thing with the creatine. I have to really ramp up electrolytes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I do well with like twice a week. The other thing is I have a 3-year-old who literally just will come in and out of it 500 times. So then I can only do it when he's not there, which is only like 3 hours in the day when he's at preschool, but then I'm also supposed to be working, so it's like, it's definitely hard. Ice bath is like,
Easy.
what, 60 seconds and you're like feeling incredible. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I would choose sauna too. I think
Yeah.
there's more long-term benefits.
Yeah.
Okay. What is something that you know isn't good for you, but brings you a lot of joy, so you do it anyway?
Subway Surfer. Subway Surfer is not
What
good
is
for me.
that?
It's a fucking video game on my phone. And I was just recently at this wedding, and friends' kids, little 7-year-old kids were playing it. And I was like, ooh, what's your high score? And one of them was like, man, I've got a great high score of 500,000. And I got so embarrassed because my high score is like 8 million. And it's just like, what the fuck am I doing with my life playing Subway Surfer? There's that. That's what I'd have to answer. Yeah.
That's
But
not so bad.
well,
Not
it's not good.
Jack Cruz would say, are you wearing red light? I mean, are you wearing red glasses?
Yeah. No, absolutely not.
Doing
Which
it
I should be.
with hardwired Ethernet.
Yes, right. Into my phone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so my final question is actually something you asked me and I wrote it down for you. So like what is exciting you, or what's interesting you in the health space now, 2024?
I'm really at this point coasting. So I'm always interested in the new stuff. Like when ice baths are, even though Wim Hof has been talking about ice baths for years, it's become popular and trendy, and sauna
Yeah.
is super interesting right now. Sleep is super interesting. And then there's like Huberman, who says don't have caffeine upon rising. And then there's all these studies that come out that try to refute him, that like, I'm just a guy who's like, I'm in my routine. I have my caffeine
Yeah.
really, really soon after rising. And I'm probably not going to make the adjustment because Huberman told me to. But I'm interested in knowing that. And so right now I feel like I'm late to the game with everything, because there's nothing really physically that I'm working to handle, I am, I told you I was interested in rowing, or I've been rowing lately, and that's more just that I had a piece of equipment that I hadn't used in a while, and I could easily put it outside and get sunlight and row at the same time, which I like. But my numbers were so off that from what when I used to be really good at it, that now it's become a little bit of a challenge. Like, can I increase my rowing splits or decrease them? Which is means you're faster. And so I guess maybe I'm interested in like cardio because for a long time I wasn't doing any cardio, and maybe some cardio is not so bad. And but I don't know. I don't know anything about like what's on the cutting edge. I think I am the last guy at the party with that stuff. You talked about mitochondria. I know there's a gal who created this company called Levels, and she has a book coming out very soon, who I'm going to have on the podcast, which deals, her whole thing is like like enhancing mitochondrial function.
Yeah.
So I guess that could be interesting. And I want to try this salt dye. What is it called?
Oh,
Methylthione,
methylene blue.
methylene blue. That
Yeah.
sounds interesting. Let's see what
Yeah.
that does. If there's no side
Yeah.
effects, I'll inject stuff into myself, or go someplace and have them shoot me up with methylene blue. It sounds so radical. It sounds futuristic.
It is. It's very futuristic.
Yeah.
Next time you're in LA, we'll go on a little field trip to get some methylene blue.
I love it. I love it. It sounds like something out of Dune, you know?
It is. It's really cool. You're like, whoa, this blue stuff is going in my vein. And actually it collects in the bladder. One of the things it does too is it actually is good for people that get chronic UTIs, because for some reason it's very attracted to the bladder. So, but you also pee out blue after.
Whoa.
So it's trippy. It's
Yeah.
really trippy. Yeah.
That sounds radical.
Yeah.
I love it. I can't wait to try that.
Great.
Laurén, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Let's do it again.
Yes.